Our top story this hour, the former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi has died at the age of 86. He had served multiple terms as leader. He was admitted to a hospital in Milan on Friday for what it said were pre-planned tests relating to his leukemia. The billionaire businessman created Italy's largest media company and also owned the leading football club AC Milan. He faced multiple legal and sex scandals, eventually leading to his resignation.
Silvio Berlusconi era soprattutto un combattente. Era un uomo che non aveva mai avuto paura a difendere.
Now, despite his legal woes, Berlusconi remained a major force in Italian politics and was an influential figure in Italy's current governing coalition led by Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. She paid tribute, saying, above all else, Silvio Berlusconi was a fighter.
Silvio Berlusconi era soprattutto un combattente. Era un uomo che non aveva mai avuto paura a difendere.
Silvio Berlusconi was above all a fighter. He was a man who was never afraid to defend his beliefs, and it was exactly that courage and determination that made him one of the most influential men in the history of Italy, that allowed him to make real turning points in the world of politics, communication, in the world of business. With him, Italy learned that it should never have limits imposed. Italy learned that it should never give up. With him we have fought, won, lost many battles, and for him we will bring home the goals that we had set ourselves together. Goodbye, Silvio.
Well, Arise chief correspondent John Cookson has been monitoring developments and joins us now from London for more. Thank you for joining us, John. Now,
Hi, ladies. Great to see you.
Thank you. What more can you tell us about the cause of Berlusconi's death?
Well, Berlusconi had been ill for some time from leukemia. He was 86 years old. He also had other problems like a heart condition, prostate cancer. He was also suffering from long COVID. He'd been in and out of hospital this year. He went in for a major checkup on April the 6th and was last seen leaving the hospital, or last photographed leaving hospital around May the 21st, but then was readmitted. So for those close to him and family, his passing won't have become much of a surprise. But certainly, this larger-than-life figure stepping off the world stage today is really a page in Italian history, very much turning. And for we journalists who followed European politics for decades, Berlusconi was always very much part of that, larger-than-life figure, the 12th richest man in the world, famous for his so-called bunga parties, which we'll perhaps talk about later. It's a big day, and it is a major loss to Italian politics.
Indeed. Now, John, can you tell us what you know about his trials and tribulations, specifically those that dogged, his political career?
If I tell you that he claimed he was in court 2,500 times in 106 trials, both civil and criminal, to give you some idea as to the litigation that he's been through over the years. He began his life as a vacuum salesman and then became a singer on a cruise ship. But as you said in the intro, made his fortune out of forming a massive media TV empire in Italy. He entered politics at the end of the 90s. He entered politics in 1994 and led governments for four times between 1994 and 2011. But during that period, there were so many allegations of corruption, and he famously hosted sex parties in his residence and elsewhere, to which the rich and famous attended. Those parties ended up in a prosecution in one case, of which he appealed, and then was let off on that. But he was convicted of fraud in 2012 and was given a year's community service, which was a massive low for Berlusconi. But he bounced back and was elected to the Senate some years later. What a character! Always a comeback man, but hated and loved, I should say, in equal measure.
Definitely a character, from a staggering amount of court appearances to the fact that he was the one behind Italy's largest media company and also the leading football club AC Milan. His allies say it's the end of an era. Is that true, John?
Yeah, very much so. I think so. He, as leader of Italy, hosted more G8 summits than for any other country in the G8. That put both himself and Italy on the world stage and meant a huge amount. But also behind the scenes, because he was corrupt and he denigrated politics in Italy, and some would say made it a laughing stock. So you have these two sides to this incredible character who could promote Italy on the world stage, and yet on the other hand, the other part of his character led to Italy being laughed at sometimes on what actually happened behind the scenes and in public. So yeah, it was an interesting career, that's for sure, and I think a big loss to Italian politics.
Now, earlier on, John, we did hear the Prime Minister, that's Giorgia Meloni, paying tributes to the late Berlusconi. Have there been any other tributes besides what we heard from her?
Well, yes. I mean, President Putin of Russia, no less, regarded him and said that he was a true friend. Meloni, you heard a clip from her. She said later in that clip that he was one of the most influential men in Italy's history. Viktor Orban of Hungary, the Hungarian Prime Minister, said, "Gone is the great fighter." One of his political opponents, Romano Prodi, said that he had huge respect for Berlusconi. And the two football clubs that you mentioned, AC Milan and AC Monza, have also paid a huge tribute, saying that, thank you, Mr. President, you'll always be with us. I have a personal memory of Berlusconi via Colonel Gaddafi, no less, of Libya. I'm talking about in the early 90s. Berlusconi and Gaddafi were great friends. And during an interview with Gaddafi, Gaddafi talked about a meeting with Tony Blair in the early 90s, and he was worried about what he would say to Tony Blair, because at that time Libya was a world pariah for its support for international terrorism. And Gaddafi rang Berlusconi and said, "What shall I tell Blair when we meet?" And Berlusconi told Gaddafi, "Tell him anything he wants to hear." And Gaddafi did. He said that he was a reformed character, that Libya no longer sponsored terrorism. And suddenly Libya was being welcomed into the world community after that meeting with Tony Blair. So Berlusconi, judging the character of world politics and Blair and Gaddafi, very well done.
All right, then thank you so much, John. We're out of time, but I was actually going to ask if you had, in the long-spanning career, had met Berlusconi yourself, seeing as you'd met world top leaders. Well, we're going to leave it here. Thank you so much for your time on Newsday.